Here's how non-US business owners are using US credit cards to travel business class for free. Look, you've probably seen those Instagram posts. Some entrepreneur lounging in a lie flat seat, champagne in hand, flying from Dubai to New York. Meanwhile, most non-US entrepreneurs are checking Google Flights thinking that that ticket costed them $10,000. But here's what nobody tells you. That business owner did not pay $10,000 for a seat. They probably paid less than $1,000 or even completely for free with points that they've gained from their business. Why? Because they use the right US credit cards that give them 3 to 4x points in return. And they use those points to basically get business class flights for free. So that's why in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how non-US business owners use US credit cards to fly business class for free. So within the last few years, there have been a lot of different digital nomads popping up left and right. People realizing that you don't necessarily need to live in your home country to actually run your business. And what I've been noticing is that since 2020, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that have started to take more flights and more trips and more experiences and all this stuff as they've been going and expanding their horizons, potentially moving to a new country, potentially traveling more, because with the post-pandemic kind of change, now you're able to, in fact, run your business multinationally. And a lot of non-US entrepreneurs base themselves in places like Bali, Singapore, Dubai, Hong Kong, or Miami, while running their business 100% remotely. And the thing is that with this change, a lot of nomads or non-US entrepreneurs have in fact increased the level of spend that they're putting on their lifestyle, regardless. Like, we know that business owners probably spend more on their lifestyle. You're going on flights to different countries throughout the world to go and do business. You want to go to nice hotels and whatnot. And the interesting thing is that a lot of these entrepreneurs, of course, they are probably running advertisements. They're probably spending a lot of money on their business. But the problem here that I'm noticing is that a lot of them are also paying full price on flights and hotels. And so this is what we're going to talk about in this video. And it's honestly something that I've been emphasizing for so many years, but we're going to do this in this video. So most non-residents know that there are point systems and there are Amex points and there are different types of points with airlines, but just most non-US residents have never gotten the chance to actually take full advantage of them, including me being a Canadian, actually not even knowing anything about the point system. I always thought of points as like coupons that really didn't do anything much to my life, right? And so again, I just wanted the most convenient thing, go on economy, pay the least amount of money. Again, I'm not the type of person that needs a lie flat seat and all this luxury. Just A to B, get to the place that I want to go. So personally, I was able to travel to 30 plus different countries. But the kicker is that I paid full price for all of those flights using Google Flights and figuring out what is the cheapest flight that I can find in Google Flights. Now, the thing here is that I was using my Canadian credit cards and I knew that I was getting points, but they were never substantial. And in some cases, I was using my debit card or whatever it is because I never kind of took full advantage of it until I had some like, oh shit moments when I realized that maybe this is something worth looking into. So I always thought that the type of people that use points have been saving their points for the last like decade or 10 years plus to actually redeem some kind of travel experience. And I'm not the type of person that's gonna do that kind of thing. I'm not the type of person that's just gonna like collect points over a few years. I gotta go on a flight, I'm gonna take that flight and just get it done. The oh shit moment happened when I was able to meet up with an entrepreneur in Poland, an American guy, and he had his US credit card. He was in the best suite in the Marriott hotel. I was in an Airbnb because I thought that was a better price. And then he actually traveled business class to Warsaw. And so I actually ended up talking to him a bit more about the credit system because I had to travel back to Toronto for like a last minute flight. And I was about to pay $1,300 just to travel back to my home country on a one-way ticket. And so I told him about my situation and he ended up telling me, wait, like, why aren't you using US credit cards? Well, I told him, look, dude, I'm a Canadian. Like, I only have Canadian credit cards. I only use Canadian debit cards and the points on the credit cards are terrible. And then he ended up telling me, like, don't you know that you can actually unlock US credit cards yourself? And firstly, when he told me that, I honestly thought that he was lying. Like, I wanted to do my own due diligence myself. So when he ended up telling me, it was like, hey, let me actually cover your flights. I've got millions of points myself. I spend a lot of money on ads. And I've got tons of points that I can't even take advantage of all of these points because I've got so many, because we spend a lot of money on advertising. We use the right credit card and we get tons of different points. So I'll take care of your flight. And I was pretty surprised because that's the first time that this ever happened to me, someone offering to pay for my own flight. And so, like, I had to like push back on him and say, no, like, no, it's fine, man. Like, it's all good. Like, I'll cover the flight. But, like, I was looking at that 1.3K price tag and I'm like, maybe that would be a great thing to happen, right? And so he ended up showing me how he was leveraging the points portals to transfer to different partners and all this kind of stuff to then get me on a lie flat business class seats down to my home country, which was crazy to think. So I was trying to purchase economy for 1.3K. He ended up putting me on business class for $1,000 worth of points, which he already had millions of points already, so he didn't really even care. And so that was one of the breaking points that I personally had to experience to then realize that, wait, there is actually a difference between US credit cards and Canadian credit cards, and US credit cards and UK credit cards, and US credit cards and Australian credit cards. And so that was the moment that I ended up going onto the Amex portal and trying to figure out those differences, realizing that yes, there is a difference between an Amex Platinum in one country and another country. So after these personal stories, I was able to further and further validate that the US credit system was the strongest in the game. After living in Dubai for a few years, realizing that if I got into debt with a Dubai-based credit card, that I would probably go to jail. Whereas with the US credit card, I would not get into any issues. Of course, there would be problems, right? Of course, you get into debt, you get collections, all this stuff. We'll talk about in other videos. But the main thing that I noticed is that the US credit cards always seem to be much, much better. And it just started to open my eyes on the opportunities that I'm missing out by not having US credit cards. So what are the visible differences with US credit cards that you wouldn't be getting with foreign credit cards? And by the way, as a business owner, you should be caring about this stuff because, again, you're spending a lot of money on advertising or on your business. You want to put the right credit card on that business spend because that could be a very substantial amount of points and actual cash that could go down to your bottom line or which you can redeem for free flights, free hotels, all that stuff. So it is worth listening to this. So the US market, the reason why it's so good is firstly because they are the ones that defended capitalism during the Cold War, right? So they've got all the laws, they've got all the foundations, and they've got a big sense of competition. There are 4,000 different commercial banks and thousands of different credit unions that are battling each other to give you credit products. Versus when I'm in Canada, I only know of 5 different major banks that are actually giving out banking products. So that difference in competition is already visible, and you can clearly see that in other countries throughout the world. So as a result, in all that competition, the US dollar, all the laws that support lenders and the actual person that has got that credit card, US credit cards are much more aggressive when it comes to their rewards and what kind of credit limits they would be giving to you. So due to the fact of that competition, the credit issuers like Amex and Bank of America and Chase Bank had to figure out a way to give better credit products to their clients, figure out a way to how can I amplify the value of these credit cards, and they realized that taking advantage of the travel industry was one of the best ways to actually amplify the value of their credit cards. So they ended up creating such a huge complex point system that led their clients to gain more value when they use a specific US credit card. And that's why it is said that airlines today are basically points businesses that happen to own planes. Because after looking into the numbers, I was able to compare American Airlines versus American Airlines points. And in fact, American Airlines itself, like all of the different airlines out throughout the world, they're not profitable. They're not making money. Like some of them to some degree are maybe breaking even or whatnot. But the real profit comes from American Airlines points, their points subdivisions. That's where all the profit is, and that's what they're trying to lean into. And the fact that them leaning into that makes it that the credit cards are actually getting better reward systems and whatnot. So like, if you're just saying, okay, I'm just going to live the rest of my life paying full price for economy, that basically means that you're telling yourself that as a non-US business owner, you've got the opportunity to go on business class lie flat seats for free, but you'd rather pay full price sitting in economy. That's really the breakdown here. So if we were to break down the math on like what kind of redemptions you would expect with US credit cards specifically, because again, I made that realization that US cards are better, right? And then I had to break down the math on how much I would actually make with these specific cards because I was thinking, okay, should I get the platinum? Should I get the gold and whatnot, right? So here's the real arbitrage. You know that you should probably take advantage of points, but what pulls you into getting access to US credit cards specifically? So here's the data that actually backs these points that I'm talking about. So offers in foreign countries and specific credit cards are going to give you lower redemptions, are going to give you lower sign-up bonuses, are going to give you less protections and less transfer partners that you can send your points into different portals. And so just by having US credit cards, if you wanted to go to Japan, for example, there's a promotion recently that is helping Americans or people with US credit cards, by the way, to go to Japan, right? And so I can transfer my Chase points into a Japanese airline and get a super good deal. Whereas if you had a Canadian credit card or a credit card in Europe, you wouldn't be able to take advantage of that promotion because it's only reserved for the Americans, right? But since you know this, there's a legal process that allows non-US citizens to tap into that. So on a very high level, if I was to break down how you can access US credit cards for yourself, it actually makes a lot of sense. It fuses into what you're already doing. What you'd be doing essentially is getting what you call a ITIN. So a lot of Americans use the SSN to get their credit card. You're going to be using your ITIN, which is the identifier number that was created for non-US citizens that don't have that SSN. So you're going to get that ITIN. Once you receive the ITIN, then you're going to want to get US personal bank accounts so that you can build a personal relationship with banks. And then get your hands on personal credit cards. And as you're building up your credit score, then you're going to get to the point when you apply for those premium credit cards. That's the Chase Sapphire Reserve, that's the Amex Platinum, that's all of the top premium credit cards that you would want to get your hands on. And then lastly, after you've built your personal credits, then you can get your hands on the business credit cards, which offer 100,000, 200,000 at 0% interest, which by the way is really great. If you're a business owner, you want to have that financial flexibility, it would be great to have that. So here's the bottom line. Premium American credit cards are a great tool to have. These credit cards are good for reducing your travel costs up down to zero as an international business owner. But you can't access them without getting into the American financial system. Now look, maybe you're watching this and thinking, okay, cool, but why do I even need US credit? My country already has credit cards. I thought the same thing until I took 60 different flights and traveled to 30 plus different countries and almost paid that 1.3K from Warsaw to Toronto on a one-way economy seat. That's when everything clicked. So watch this video in a bit more detail on how I was personally able to travel to a bunch of different countries for pretty much half the price. Because I had my US credit cards. Click here to watch the full video. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.